In the year 2318, humanity had spread across the stars. Vast colonies dotted the galaxy like glittering beads on an endless black expanse. In the farthest reaches of the Andromeda sector, an empire, ancient and mysterious, ruled with an iron fist. Their technology was beyond comprehension, their power limitless. But even in the midst of their dominance, a single moment, a single decision, would shift the balance of the universe forever. The stars outside the viewing window flickered like dying embers as the Imperial starship Aegis soared through the void. Commander Rion Devereux stood at the helm, his gaze steady but uneasy. His hands, wrapped tightly around the controls, betrayed the restlessness growing inside him. "Report!" he barked, his voice cutting through the silent hum of the ship's engines. "Approaching the coordinates, Commander," said Lieutenant Guy, her voice calm, unshaken. She was the steady hand on this mission, but even she couldn't hide the nervousness in her eyes. "We've detected a disturbance in the gravitational field, some sort of anomaly, Commander. It's not on our charts." Ryan frowned. The order was clear: observe the anomaly and ensure it posed no threat to the Empire. But his instincts told him there was more to this mission than what appeared on the surface. "Prepare for planetary descent. I'll go down myself," he said, his voice steady now, betraying none of the unease that twisted in his gut. Ryan had been in command long enough to understand that not every mission went according to plan. And this one, something about it felt different. Something dark. Something alive. The moment Ryan stepped out of the ship's shuttle and onto the soil of the planet below, the air hit him like a hammer. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of damp earth and alien flora. Above him, the sky was a swirling mass of violet clouds, and distant lightning streaked across the heavens in erratic patterns. The planet's surface was a tangled wilderness, where enormous twisted trees clawed at the sky and the ground was a dark, spongy marsh. The anomaly they had detected was just beyond the thick underbrush, and Ryan's mission was to investigate it before the Empire decided if they should annex the planet or destroy it. The jungle was eerily silent. There were no sounds of wildlife, no rustling in the leaves. It was as though the planet itself was holding its breath. Ryan's boots sank into the swampy ground with every step, and the metallic hum of his ship was drowned out by the oppressive silence. He wasn't alone. Lieutenant Guy and her team were a few paces behind, scanning the area with their advanced equipment. But it was Ryan's sharp eyes that caught the first sign of something wrong. A faint rustling, almost imperceptible, and then a growl, low, deep, primal. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. The growl wasn't from any known creature in the Empire's database. It came from something far more dangerous and far more intelligent. Without a word, he signaled to Guy to move forward, drawing his energy. Rifle. They pushed through the dense foliage, each step careful, deliberate. The growling grew louder, more persistent, until they finally emerged into a clearing. What they saw there would change everything. In the center of the clearing stood a beast unlike anything Ryan had ever seen before. A creature so massive it seemed to block out the sky. Its body was sleek, covered in dark, iridescent fur that shimmered like the void between stars. Muscles rippled beneath its skin as it breathed, its chest expanding and contracting like the ebb and flow of the galaxy itself. But it wasn't alone. A smaller version of the creature, its cub, lay beside it, struggling to rise. The cub's legs were weak, its eyes glazed with pain, its breath shallow and labored. The alpha, this enormous wolf, was on its last legs. One of its hind legs was shattered, twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood pooled around its form, staining the soft moss beneath it. The cub whimpered, trying in vain to nuzzle its mother's side, desperate to rouse her. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced, processing the situation. This was no ordinary animal. It was an alien life form, a predator the likes of which he couldn't even begin to understand. It was the size of a small starship, its fangs long enough to tear through steel, and yet here it was, helpless, doomed to die in this strange and hostile world. Guy was the first to speak, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Commander, should we?" Ryan didn't respond immediately. His mind churned with the weight of his decision. The Empire had no room for weakness. These creatures, whatever they were, could be a threat, and the orders were clear. Eliminate any potential danger. But as he stood there, staring at the injured mother and her cub, something gnawed at him. The way the creature looked at him, those eyes full of pain, desperation, but also understanding, stirred something deep inside him. "Commander," Guy said again, her voice rising. "We can't just—" "I know," Ryan muttered, cutting her off. "I'm not sure what we're dealing with here, but we can't leave them to die like this." He dropped to one knee, his pulse pounding in his ears. His hand hovered over the emergency med patch at his belt. He could save the mother. He had the tools, the technology, the means. But the Empire would never forgive him for this. A decision like this would cost him everything. Ryan's hand trembled as he touched the med patch, hesitating for a moment before pressing it against the creature's side. The serum injected into its bloodstream almost immediately. It wasn't a cure, but it would stabilize the wolf long enough to give her a fighting chance. The wolf's eyes flickered, as if sensing something had changed. Her breathing steadied, her massive body rising slightly as the wound began to clot. But it wasn't enough. The cub, its tiny frame barely moving, let out another weak cry. The mother, still recovering, turned her head toward it, and for a fleeting moment, Ryan thought, he saw the glimmer of recognition in her gaze, as though she understood what he had done. "Commander, we need to move out!" Guy shouted, her tone sharp with urgency. "This is a trap! We don't know what else could be here!" Ryan's eyes flicked toward Guy, then back to the wolf and her cub. The air around him seemed to hold its breath. He knew that leaving them here, dying, helpless, was a fate he couldn't bear to be responsible for. "No," he said, his voice firm. "We're taking them with us." The decision was made. The journey back to the Aegis was tense, the air thick with tension. Ryan and his team had managed to transport the injured wolf and her cub aboard the ship, the mother still barely alive, her breathing shallow but steady thanks to the med patch. As the ship ascended, Ryan watched through the viewports as the dark jungle of the planet receded beneath them. He couldn't help but wonder about the creature's origin. What were these beings? Why had they been left to die? But there was no time for answers, not now. As the Aegis reached orbit, the commanding officer, Admiral Torin, was already waiting in the command center. Ryan knew this wouldn't go well. He had disobeyed direct orders. "Commander Devereux," the Admiral's voice crackled through the comms. "Explain yourself." Ryan straightened, standing at attention. "Admiral, Do not speak. I know what you've done," the Admiral interrupted. "You've endangered the entire crew with your irrational decisions. That creature, those aliens, they are a threat, and you've brought them aboard our ship. I'll have you court-martialed for this." Ryan's chest tightened, but he held his ground. "They were dying, sir. I couldn't leave them there, and I believe they may hold answers to the anomaly we detected." The Admiral's expression darkened. "Answers? These are nothing more than animals. We are Empire soldiers, not caretakers for alien beasts. Do you understand that?" Ryan's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, an unexpected voice cut through the tension. The wolf, the Alpha, let out a low, guttural growl from the medical bay. In the days that followed, the Empire's decision was swift and brutal. They gave Ryan a choice: relinquish control over the creatures and leave the mission, or face execution for insubordination. But the truth had already begun to take root inside him. Something in the wolf, in the cub, had stirred a feeling Ryan could not deny. They weren't just animals. They were a species, a civilization. And if the Empire was willing to sacrifice them so casually, it was only a matter of time before they would be next. And so, against everything he had ever believed, Ryan made a choice. He would protect the wolf, and somehow, he would protect the cub too, no matter the cost. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that the wolf and her cub were not the only ones stranded in this part of the galaxy. And their story was just beginning. A massive warship, cloaked and undetected, drifted silently in the blackness of space. Inside, Empress Sereth, ruler of the Zalian Empire, watched in silence as her fleet gathered for a strike. Her eyes narrowed, her hands clenched into fists. Let them protect their dead beasts. Soon they will understand the true cost of mercy. And with that, she gave the order. The galaxy was about to learn just how much they underestimated the power of a single wolf. The Aegis hung in the black void of space, her engines silent, her crew uneasy. Ryan had become an outcast in the eyes of the Empire. His actions, saving the alien wolf and her cub, had been branded as insubordination, and the punishment for it was clear. He had been stripped of his rank, his future, and his command. But the wolves, those creatures, were still aboard. Ryan stared out the viewport, his thoughts a blur of questions and dread. The mother wolf, now stable but weak, had been placed in the medical bay under quarantine. Her cub, too, was being closely monitored. Both creatures were undeniably alien, their biology unlike anything Ryan had ever encountered before, but they were still alive. They still had a chance. He couldn't leave them to die. Behind him, Lieutenant Guy stood, her posture stiff, her expression hard to read. "Commander," she said softly, though the word no longer fit. Do you think they will understand?" "The Empire, I mean." Ryan didn't turn to face her. He kept his eyes on the stars beyond. "It doesn't matter if they understand," he muttered. "They've already made up their minds. They want us to dispose of them, dispose of me." Guy was silent for a moment, but then she stepped closer, her voice low. "You saved them. I don't think it was just the wolves you were trying to save." Ryan met her eyes, his voice thick with regret and defiance. "I couldn't just let them die, not like that." The door to the command center slid open, and Admiral Torrens stepped inside. His cold, calculating eyes bore into Ryan with a fury that could strip paint from the walls. "You've gone too far, Devereux," the Admiral said, his tone venomous. "I gave you one order, one simple order, but you—" He stopped himself, the disgust palpable in his words. "You have chosen the path of a traitor." Ryan's heart beat faster, but his voice remained steady. "I chose the path of mercy, Admiral, and I will not apologize for it." Torrens' lip curled in contempt. "Mercy? You dare speak of mercy after defying the Empire? You brought those animals aboard this ship. I'll have them killed, and you too, if necessary." Guy stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on her sidearm. "You don't understand, sir. These creatures aren't just beasts. There's something different about them." Torrens' eyes narrowed. "What are you implying, Lieutenant?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "But they're not just creatures. They're intelligent. We've seen their capacity for empathy, for recognition. They could be more than just predators," the Admiral scoffed. "The only thing they are is a threat, and I'll see them eliminated before they destroy us all." The Aegis shook suddenly, throwing Ryan and Guy off balance. Red alert lights flashed across the room, and the ship's alarms blared as an ominous voice crackled over the intercom. "Battle! Stations! Incoming enemy fleet! Coordinates unknown! Shields are failing!" Ryan's heart pounded as he staggered to his feet. "What the hell is going on?" A few moments later, the ship's AI came online with a chilling message. Multiple vessels, decloaking, hostile signature detected. Large warships, Zalian Empire class. Ryan's eyes widened in realization. The Zalian Empire, the same faction that had crushed entire star systems without a second thought, the very empire that had once almost destroyed humanity, was here. And they were coming for them. And with them came their deadly covert fleet, black as void itself. Admiral Torren's face grew pale as he grabbed the comm panel. "Prepare for battle," he barked, the authority in his voice returning. "All hands, brace for impact. This is not a drill." But Ryan's mind was elsewhere, darting to the massive creature lying in the medbay. The wolf. Could it be that the Empire's assault was not coincidental? "Lieutenant," Ryan snapped, "I need to see the wolf, now!" Inside the sterile medbay, the wolf lay motionless, its massive form now fully sedated and resting on an operating table. Her cub, still frail and weak, rested beside her, nursing from a synthetic device that mimicked the warmth of her mother's presence. But the atmosphere in the room felt different now. The air was charged with a strange energy, and Ryan could feel it in his bones. Something was wrong. Something had changed. He approached the table slowly, his breath shallow. The wolf's eyes flickered open. She was still disoriented, but her gaze was intense, penetrating, almost knowing. The cub stirred. Beside her, blinking up at him with those same intelligent eyes. Suddenly, Ryan felt it. A presence, a shift in the air, a pulse of energy, subtle but unmistakable. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the wolf's fur. In an instant, a strange vision flashed before his eyes. An ancient city, sprawling and magnificent, covered in alien inscriptions and symbols. A vast sky swirling with cosmic storms, a cry for help, a warning. And then, the wolf, running, chasing something or fleeing from something, a prophecy long forgotten. The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving Ryan gasping for breath. The room was spinning, and he felt an odd weight pressing down on his chest. "Commander!" Guy's voice broke through the disorientation. "What happened?" Ryan couldn't speak at first. His mind was overwhelmed with the images, the power of them. And then, a terrible realization hit him. "The wolf," Ryan whispered, his voice shaking. "It's not just a creature, it's part of something bigger, a warning, this ship, the attack, it's all connected." Just as he said those words, the alarms blared again. "Enemy ships have broken through our outer defenses," came the panicked voice over the intercom. "Engines offline, shields down, we're sitting ducks." Ryan turned toward the door, his heart racing. He had to act, and fast. "The Zalians are here," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "And they're not just after the ship. They're after something else, something the wolf knows." The battle was fierce. The Aegis was outmatched, her hull buckling under the relentless barrage from the Zalian fleet. Ryan and his remaining crew were scrambling to maintain control of the ship, but the situation was rapidly deteriorating. In the medbay, the wolf's condition had worsened. But she wasn't just dying, she was changing. Her body seemed to be absorbing some kind of energy from the environment, drawing in something unseen, and her eyes glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light. "This isn't possible," Ryan whispered, staring at the transformation. "She's..." Before he could finish his sentence, the ship lurched again, sending him sprawling to the floor. The lights flickered, and the entire ship seemed to tremble in space as if the fabric of reality itself was coming undone. "The Zalians are boarding." Guy's voice rang through the comms. "Commander, we need to move, now!" Ryan snapped back into focus. They had minutes, maybe less, before the ship was lost. But as he looked at the wolf, he saw something in her eyes. Something familiar, something recognizable. The wolf, this alien, wasn't just a predator. She was a survivor, a force of nature. She had lived through worlds being destroyed, civilizations falling. She was the last of her kind, and now she had awakened. With a final desperate look at the wolf, Ryan made a decision. He would not let the Empire win. He couldn't. Ryan took the wolf's head in his hands, pressing his forehead against hers. For the first time, he truly understood. The wolf wasn't just an animal. It was a vessel of knowledge, of power, of something that could change the course of the galaxy. He stood. "Guy, get ready. We're going to fight back. The Empire doesn't know what they're dealing with." As Ryan and Guy sprinted toward the bridge, the Aegis shuddered again. The Xalian forces were inside the ship now, their boots clanging against the metal corridors as they searched for their targets. But Ryan wasn't afraid anymore. The wolf had awakened, and in doing so, she had unlocked something deep inside him. The Xalians would pay for underestimating the strength of the last of the Wolfkind. They would soon learn that not all alien beasts were meant to be destroyed, and Ryan Devereux would ensure that the Empire's reign of terror would come to an end. The war for the galaxy had just begun. Ryan's boots echoed down the dimly lit corridors of the Aegis. His heart raced, but it wasn't fear that drove him forward now. It was something much deeper. The wolf had shared its ancient power with him, a surge of energy that coursed through his veins, like an awakening deep within his DNA. The connection between them had unlocked something profound, something hidden for millennia. Behind him, Guy was right on his heels, her face a mask of determination. "Commander," she said breathlessly, "the Xalians are everywhere. They've breached the reactor core. If they disable the engines, we'll be dead in minutes." Ryan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere, focused on the vision he had received. The cryptic warning, the images of a civilization destroyed, and the last survivors scattered across the stars. He had seen the wolf as part of something much greater than a mere animal. She was a key, a gatekeeper to an ancient power, a power that, if unleashed, could tip the balance of the entire galaxy. "Hold them off as best you can," Ryan said, his voice colder than he'd ever heard it before. "I'm going to do what has to be done." They reached the bridge just as the Xalian soldiers stormed through the hatch. The room was chaos. Sparks flew from the damaged consoles, and the air crackled with the tension of imminent death. The few remaining crew members were fighting tooth and nail, but their numbers were too few. They were overwhelmed, and then, through the haze of battle, Ryan saw the one thing he had been praying wouldn't happen: the wolf. She was standing at the center of the bridge, towering over everyone. Her body was shimmering with an otherworldly aura, her eyes glowing with intense energy. The once mighty Predator was now an embodiment of pure, untamed power. The wolf was not just surviving anymore. She was awakening something. Guy's voice cut through the din. "Commander, what's happening to her?" But Ryan didn't answer. He was too transfixed by the sight of the creature. She wasn't just the last of her kind. She was the progenitor. The wolf had unlocked an ancient legacy that had been hidden from the universe for eons, the key to the true power of the galaxy. Before he could act, the Xalian forces made their move, their weapons raised. Ryan's body instinctively reacted, powered by the energy coursing through him from the wolf's awakening. He moved faster than he thought possible, a blur of motion. In one fluid motion, he grabbed an assault rifle, disarmed a Xalian soldier, and hurled him into the nearest bulkhead with unnatural strength. The wolf let out a bone-shaking growl, her voice harmonizing with Ryan's own growing power. A brilliant shockwave rippled out from her, knocking back the remaining Xalian soldiers like rag dolls. Their weapons fell to the floor, useless. And then, for the first time since arriving on the Aegis, Ryan saw something unimaginable. Through the smoke and debris, a figure emerged from the shadows. A figure he knew. It was Admiral Torin. His face, was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a glint of something sinister. He stepped forward, his hands raised in mock surrender, as the battle in the background came to a standstill. The surviving crew members, as well as the Zalian soldiers, were all staring at the Admiral in disbelief. "Commander Devereux," Touraine said, his voice cold and calculating, "you've gone too far. You've turned the tide, but you still don't understand what you're up against." Ryan's breath quickened. "What do you mean? What the hell's going on here?" Torin smiled, but it wasn't a smile of triumph. It was one of familiarity. "I'm not the enemy, Devereux. I'm part of something much bigger. You see, the Zalians didn't just come to destroy your ship. They came because they knew. They knew what the wolf was, a relic of a lost civilization that predates even their own. They knew she was the key to a power that could change everything." Ryan's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" Torin's eyes gleamed with knowledge, but there was an edge to his voice, a coldness that sent a shiver down Ryan's spine. "You think the wolf is the last of her kind? You think this is just a coincidence? The Zalians didn't just want to conquer you, Commander. They wanted to awaken the wolf. They wanted to control the power she holds." Ryan felt his stomach drop. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Zalians, the Empire? Had they been playing a game all along? Had the wolf, this magnificent creature, this alien force, been just a pawn? "Your mother," Torin continued, almost tenderly, as though he were delivering some grand secret, "was part of the project. The original project, I mean. You see, you are no mere soldier, Devereux. You were created for a purpose." Ryan froze. His mind reeled. His thoughts spun like a vortex. "What do you mean, created?" Torin's smile grew, and it was then that the full truth hit Ryan like a tidal wave. "You were engineered, Ryan, just like the wolf. A human, a hybrid, designed to wield the power of the wolf kind. Your mother, well, she was a scientist, one of the few who understood the genetic legacy the wolf carried. She and others of her kind manipulated your genes, programmed your very DNA to bond with the wolves, because you were meant to find her, to awaken the ancient power." Ryan took a step back, his mind reeling. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. "No, this can't be." But Torin was relentless. "You felt it, haven't you? The connection, the power you've unlocked? You weren't just a soldier on some mindless mission, Ryan. You were created to be the bridge, the conduit between two worlds, between the Empire and the ancient power that slumbers beneath the stars. Your mother's project, the Empire's project, it was all leading to this. You were always meant to awaken the wolf, to channel the power, to control it." The realization hit Ryan like a punch to the gut. His entire life, a life built on honor, duty, and belief in the Empire, had been a lie. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a tool. The wolf, the power, the ancient civilization that had vanished into the depths of the galaxy, it was all connected. And now, the Zalians, the Empire, and even his own blood had sought to harness that power for their own ends. His hands clenched into fists. He could feel the power within him, the wolf's power, growing stronger, surging. It had always been there, buried in his DNA, waiting to be unlocked. But he wasn't their puppet. Not anymore. Ryan's mind raced. He thought of the wolf, her glowing eyes, and the sacrifice she had made. He thought of her cub, still fragile, but alive. They had been waiting for this moment, waiting for him to make the right choice. And then, a realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. The wolf, she wasn't just a key, she wasn't just a weapon, she was a test of will, a test of humanity. The Zalians wanted to control her, but she had chosen Ryan, chosen him as her partner, not a master. The wolf had always been a survivor, not a conqueror. And in that moment, Ryan understood. His hand moved instinctively, reaching for the detonator in his pocket. Torin's eyes widened. "What are you doing, Devereaux? Don't!" But it was too late. Ryan slammed his hand down on the console, triggering the ship's self-destruct sequence. The countdown began. The Zalian fleet was already in disarray, but now the Aegis would go down in flames, taking them all with it. "You can't control it, Torin," Ryan said coldly, stepping away from the Admiral. "You never could." As the ship trembled and the countdown echoed in the corridors, Ryan turned to face the wolf. She watched him with those ancient eyes. Eyes that held the weight of centuries, eyes that had seen civilizations rise and fall. And for the first time, Ryan felt peace. The universe was a vast, unforgiving place. But in this moment, Ryan knew the truth. He had chosen freedom. And the wolf, her legacy, would live on. In the end, the power had always belonged to them. Not the Empire, not the Zalians, but to the creatures who understood what it meant to survive. And in that survival, the galaxy would change. The end.